I do want to give a small disclaimer. I talk about rap music, which means that I'm going to have some rap in my presentation, which means that there may be some, well, there will be some explicit language within my presentation, but know that there is there are means for the explicit language, right? There are reasons that we're going to hear, and we're going to discuss it. Like rap music, I like to have an interactive lecture or presentation, so I may ask you some questions throughout, but I want to demonstrate to you exactly what I'm talking about in my research about how rap affects attitudes and behavior, okay? As Dr. Gillespie stated, my research, the title of my book is Pulse of the People, Political Rap Music and Black Politics. And as you see the quote here from Angela Davis, music has long permeated the daily life of most African Americans. It has played a central role in the normal socialization process, and during moments characterized by intense movements for social change, it's helped to shape the necessary political consciousness. And so we will see some examples of ways in which music has affected political consciousness, has been involved in movements for social change, and I will talk about those. But what I'm primarily interested in as a political psychologist is the socialization process. How does music impact or socialize attitudes? So with that, I had an overarching question of, does listening to rap affect one's political attitudes? And specifically, I was interested in the effects of rap on Black nationalist and Black feminist ideology or attitudes among Black rap listeners. And I also was interested in understanding if there is a difference between subgenres of rap. So is one subgenre more effective than others in the formation or dismantling of political attitudes? So is political rap different from non-political rap, for instance? So is political rap different from trap music or trap rap? Right? So I wanted to look at the differences. Of course, when we're looking at the literature, it suggests that there are distinctions in subgenres of rap, and that these distinctions and these different subgenres should have an impact on the attitudes that are adopted. Most of our research on the effects of music are either in two ways. One, if we're looking at music as a form of resistance, then that's looking at the positive aspects of music, right? And that can be looking at music like music during the Civil Rights Movement. That can be looking at folk music as an example. And within this type of music or these cultural forms, they refer to music as a hidden transcript. And James Scott talks about this primarily and identifies this theory that there are hidden languages or coded words within music that are conveyed to marginalized groups who create the music that others, non-marginalized individuals, may not be able to reference or understand, right? And so I will say that rap, when it started, was definitely in this vein, and I will argue that it continues to be in this vein of hidden transcripts. Even though rap has become a lot more explicit today, as far as what it wants to say, there are still some hidden or coded language embedded that you have to be a member of this community to kind of understand what some of the music means. And then there's the alternative, and this is most of the research we know, right? And this is the impact of rap on violent or negative behaviors or attitudes. So is rap sexist? Does rap lead to sexist attitudes? Does rap lead to violence against women? Does rap lead to more violence in the community? This is where most of the research lies. And so what I wanted to do with my research was to look at the positive aspects on how it can actually impact political attitudes and behavior that are beneficial for African Americans. Okay. And I kind of went on it with some of these ideas from rap artists. The most famous is probably Chuck D's Rap is the CNN of the Inner City. And it's the idea that rap provides information. Rap is a sort of media source for the Black community in order to, or for the inner city specifically, in order to learn about things that are occurring in their neighborhoods and to contextualize things that are occurring. Willie D, a member of the Ghetto Boys, said that we are politicians and our fans are our constituents, which means that they represent their fans, right? They're representing their fans and they're speaking out on behalf of their fans. And then JayZ comes and says, I give you the news with a twist. So I placed my research in the media, in the literature of media politics. And so how does media influence? So looking at things like framing and priming and setting agendas and arguing that rap music is a way for marginalized communities to have their issues heard when it is not on the dominant or mainstream news circuit. So again, I said I was a political psychologist, so I have to look at the psychological aspects as well, and I have to explain what exactly I believe is happening when you are exposed to rap music, and specifically when you are exposed to political rap music. So my argument is that when you are exposed to rap music, it provides you with information. And that information can then impact your attitudes or your beliefs. If you had previous held attitudes and the information is similar to those attitudes you have, then it will only bolster those attitudes. If you did not have those attitudes, it would give you more information that could lead to the development of the attitudes that are presented within the song. Okay, that is overall. And then, of course, your attitude can impact your behavior. And specifically, and we'll talk about in a little while, if you adopt a black nationalist or a black feminist ideology, it definitely impacts how you behave, when you behave, and with which groups you behave with. Okay? So I have an example. How does this work? How does music impact your attitude? And so my first example is from JayZs 99 Problems, and I usually have the edited version of this, but apparently it is not on this jump drive. So I brought the wrong jump drive today. So fortunately, we're only listening to the second verse, so we don't have to hear the chorus part as much, right? But it's important to hear this video, hear this song, and then listen or look at the lyrics. So then we can understand how does exposure to political rap affect your behaviors. Okay? So I'm going to play the song now. Well, what was JayZ talking about in this verse? Yes. He was talking about being pulled over by the police. What else? He was talking about racial profiling. He was talking about his Fourth Amendment rights. Right? So he was discussing political issues. He was invoking his Fourth Amendment rights. Now, don't do as JayZ did, because he is not all the way correct, right? There's this little thing called probable cause that he did not even mention in this when he's talking about his rights. So we don't want to follow his example completely, but he's talking about issues that occur in urban communities and that black men and black women sometimes face. This idea of racial profiling, but this idea of illegal searches and seizures, and his protection as a citizen against illegal searches and seizures. Right? So this is really important information. And my argument is that when you are exposed to information like this, even if you only knew that he was talking about racial profiling and being pulled over by the police, you will start to think, okay, well, what else is he talking about in this song? Okay, so I will need to know more about what my rights are as a citizen, which will lead you to learn about your civil liberties, right? And so it can affect your attitudes and it can affect the knowledge that you have. So that is one example. But we know that there is this history of politics within black music. And you can see this history here, starting with music that was created during slavery. So you have spirituals, and then you have coded songs such as Follow the Drinking Gourd, which was actually talking about looking at the Big Dipper in order to escape from slavery, so following the North Star, which is a part of the Big Dipper, right? And so it was coded language. Then when they were singing it in the fields, it just sounded like a spiritual, or it sounded like a song they were singing, right? But it actually had coded languages and messages. And we see this not only in music, but in other cultural forms and other cultural ways, right? And so we can go from slavery up until our modern era. And that brings us to our discussion about rap music. When I was doing my research, the major critique I would have was, well, rap is not political anymore. You know, they have people like the Yin Yang Twins out. They're not talking about anything. There is not any political rap. If you wanted to do a study on when rap was political, then you needed to focus on this golden age. And this was this age between 1985 and 1993, or 1996, depending on who you talk to, where there was all of this political rap music, where it was blatantly political, where you had groups like Public Enemy, and even NWA is included in this, right, with F the Police and the Stop the Violence movement. But my argument is that political rap still exists today. And instead of looking at artists to say that these artists are political, like identifying, well, there's a Talib Kweli and he's political, or there's a Common and he's political, I suggest that you look at individual songs of different artists. Because Lil Wayne makes political rap music. Right? Lil Wayne has a song where he criticizes the drug disparity in prison sentencing. Lil Wayne has a song where he talks about the lack of government response to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. Trick Daddy, who is from Miami, has a song called America, where he criticizes. But he also has a song called Nan, right? So there are those differences there. And as I just showed you JayZ's 99 Problems, which most of us want to look at and talk about the chorus and the misogyny that's present there, but he also has some political messages within his music as well. And so I argue that rap music, that political rap still exists, and we need to be able to know how to identify political rap music. And so this is a list of songs, for example, that deal with the issue of racial profiling in rap. And police brutality, because there are a number of songs, and we've seen a lot more created in our current era with all of the issues of police violence against young individuals. One of these people, more recently, who has created political rap music to deal with police violence is T.I. T.I. is an artist from Atlanta. His first album was called Trap Music. So he started off talking about trapping, selling drugs, being in the trap. What was this, 2016, he released another album called Us or Else. And this album is called A Letter to the System. Most of the songs on that album are political rap songs. One of the songs on this album deals specifically with this issue of police violence. And so we will look at this video. And the reason I want to look at this video instead of listening to or looking at the lyrics is because the video has a lot of imagery, and we can discuss it after we watch the video. But this is one of the songs off T.I.'s album. Okay, again, so I want us to listen and actually view that video because T.I. did something a little different there, right? He was able to use different characters to show depictions of actual police violence that happened, focusing on the murders of Tamir Rice, Eric Garner, and Philando Castile, and showing us what it would look like if these victims were white instead of being black, right? And how people would feel. And his idea is that people do not feel as much empathy towards black victims as they would towards white victims. But then he also brings in this discussion and shows and demonstrates this idea of racism in the United States. And he kind of ends with that, right? That is something different that we are experiencing. What's unique about T.I. is that he was just named to the transition team for our current mayor, Keisha Lance-Bottoms, both him and Killer Mike, right? And so T.I. started off talking about trap music, started off talking about violence, and we can talk about the political aspects of that. But now, in the last couple of years, he's been very active, much more active in political causes, including these various protests that have occurred around the country. But also, he wrote an open letter to Barack Obama when he was leaving office, and he wrote an open letter to Donald Trump when he was coming into his position, explaining exactly where he stood and exactly what he wanted for his community and community members, right? And so we see that rap artists are political and that they are introducing political music. So with that, let's see. Again, there are a number of ways in which rap artists have been involved. So as you see up top is the T.I.'s cover for his album Us or Else, Letter to the System. At the bottom is actually the Atlanta protest that occurred here where they blocked off the interstate. T.I. actually participated in those protests. The next picture in the middle is Michael Brown's parents. So the refrain that we heard in T.I.'s song, Hands Up, was something that was utilized after Michael Brown was shot in Ferguson. The Don't Breathe part came from Eric Garner's murder in New York. And you can see J. Cole participating in a protest in New York after Eric Garner occurred. And then down here you see Snoop and the gang with the LAPD. They led a protest. They organized and led a protest to the Los Angeles Police Department. And then at the bottom is various artists participating in protests in Ferguson. So demonstrating that rap is still political, demonstrating that rap artists are involved in protests and are participating in behavior. So not the typical negative depictions that we usually hear about rap music and rap artists. I will hold this one to the end just in case we want to come back, but this is another local artist, 21 Savage, who is actually from here, and again, an artist that is not typical of your political rap artist, but this song is talking about political rap issues, and talking about issues of police violence, but also talking about issues of a lack of support. He talks about issues of the opioid epidemic. He even says in his verse that we use Percocets because we suffer so much pain, right? So he's talking about mental illness as well in some of these songs, in these verses as well as why some of those issues occur. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and play it because I told you all about it, and it's only the first two verses, so we won't have to listen to that entire song. But he starts off with Colin Kaepernick. So again, that's from 21 Savage. He's not the best lyricist, I'm a fan of lyrics, right? I always laugh when he says, "Same place where the best chicken getting fried at." I thought that was funny. He was really trying to make that rhyme right there, right? But you see that he's talking about a number of issues, right? And he's talking about trying to give an explanation to some of the things that are occurring in communities, some of the things such as the increase in gang violence, as well as why children are dropping out of school, as well as why young people are utilizing prescription pain medicine, right? And so he talks about a number of those issues. So my whole thesis is that you can actually learn information from hip-hop, and it can increase or affect your attitudes. And specifically, I wanted to look at black nationalism or in black feminism. One, as Alexander Ford says, because black nationalism is the dominant ideology in contemporary black politics. It's one of the top ideologies. The second is typically black feminism as standalone ideologies. And black nationalism is basically looking at this idea where individuals put race first, right? And so when they are evaluating candidates, when they are evaluating how they live their lives, where they send their kids to school, what type of hairstyles they adopt and all of that, they're looking at things that deal with putting their race first. So how they're evaluating things based on their race, right? And so that is a summary of what black nationalism is. And so in my research, I show how black nationalism is portrayed in rap music. So all of these things I actually discuss in the book. And I have images for you here because I say that black nationalism is not portrayed in rap music only through the lyrics, but also through the imagery, also through the ways that artists may dress, and also through the style that artists may adopt. And so I say that there can be both implicit and explicit examples of black nationalism in rap music. As example, there I have Trick Daddy does Holiday, a verse from here, where at the bottom he says, "Let's add some chapters named Martin, Malcolm, and Farrakhan." Here he is alluding to two popular black nationalist leaders, Malcolm X and Louis Farrakhan, right? So he's invoking or calling out black nationalist leaders. That is more explicit. It can be more implicit, as you see from the verse with Nas, where he says, "What do we own? Not enough land, not enough homes, not enough banks to give a brother a loan. What do we own? The skin on our backs. We run and we ask for reparations, then they hit us with tax." Here, Nas is actually talking about this idea of self-reliance, which is a key part of black nationalist ideology, right? So he's emphasizing that we need to be more self-reliant as far as the black community. They need to own banks, they need to own homes. And so you can have both implicit and explicit references within music, but also within album art and within the style of dress. So at the top, and I hope you can see it, is the red, black, and green album cover of a group called Dead Prez. Can you see the image? Well, instead of the red, black, and green flag, which we know was created by Marcus Garvey and identified as a black liberation flag, this is actually a red, black, and green. These are actually red, black, and green bandanas put together. Dead Prez says that their style is RBG, which could be stand for red, black, and green, but it says it's revolutionary but gangster. So they have the bandanas there to represent the gangster side, but the colors red, black, and green to show that they are still talking about revolutionary political issues. And if you ever listen to Dead Prez, you will see that they are definitely very revolutionary and definitely very gangster. Okay, the second image is the album cover from KRS-One's song, album By All Means Necessary, Boogie Down Productions at the top. And I show this one next to the famous image of Malcolm X because KRS-One was replicating that image of Malcolm X, right? He just made it a little bit more modern. So instead of carrying the big rifle, he's carrying a Uzi, right? Instead of wearing a suit in the way that Malcolm X wears a suit, KRS-One is also wearing a suit, but it's a hip-hop suit, right? He has on his jacket, he has on his leather pants and his hat that goes with it. They're both looking out the window to protect their family from individuals that could be harming that could possibly harm their families, and different types of individuals. Malcolm X is looking for those that were threatening him, and KRS-One is looking for those that are threatening him in his urban neighborhoods. And then finally at the bottom is the soldiers of the first world, right, which are soldiers that always participated with Public Enemy. They are part of the Public Enemy group. And as you see there, they're wearing the all-black garb of the Black Panther Party. They often took formations that was similar to the Fruit of Islam, which is the security aspect of the Nation of Islam. And so you see references and allusions to Black nationalism, not only in the lyrics, not only in the music, but also in the album art, and also in the individuals and their style of dress that they portray as well. And so the second aspect that I look at is Black feminism. And there are a number of ways to look at Black feminism. And so I look at both Black feminism, but also this idea of hip-hop feminism. And this idea of hip-hop feminism was for women who enjoyed hip-hop music, but still was able to critique it for the misogyny and sexism that was present within the music, right? So to still be able to embrace hip-hop, but to also understand that hip-hop has misogynistic and sexist ways and tendencies that could be detrimental to women as well. And so I look at Black feminism within my music as well, within my study as well. And so I have a couple images up here. First is Joan Morgan, and she wrote the book When Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost. And she is the first person to coin this term hip-hop feminist, right? So she is the leading person for the hip-hop feminist theory. And she is very important when we're talking about, because she's able to critique rap music and still have her feminist perspective. Then I have some other images that dealt with feminism within hip-hop in some of our more recent years. The top images is Nicki Minaj, and as you see, she has this barbed wire protecting her booty. And it's called a booty protector, and it was given to her by George Lopez when she came on his show. And the reason he gave it to her is because she was recently on the Regis, and I think it was Kathy Lee at the time, show. And when she went on to the show, Regis Philbin went up to her and grabbed her booty. And he said, I wanted to just touch it to see if it was authentic, right? So that was a problem. That was clearly a sexual assault, right? He did not have her permission, and he went up and grabbed her booty. So George Lopez said this is a way to prevent individuals from coming to grab your booty. Now I'm gonna stay with Nicki Minaj, stay with me for a while, and go down to her bottom image there. And this is her album cover for her single called Anaconda off her image. And everybody was waiting to see this album cover come out because she was talking a lot about what this album cover was going to do in this new song, and they wanted to hear the new song. But when the album cover came out, she was criticized a lot about the album cover. And the version that appeared did not have the parental advisory label there. All right, so as you can imagine, she was criticized by having all of her body exposed, and it was all these criticisms about young women looking up to her, and this is the image she's putting out, and how is that going to affect them? And so what Nicki Minaj did is she took her image, this image that is presented here, and she posted on her Instagram page. And she followed up by showing all of these images from the covers of Sports Illustrated and other magazines where white women were in their G-strings. And next to those images, she put acceptable. She put some of the language that was used to categorize those images, angel-like, for instance, in quotation. She put beautiful in quotation. Then when she got down to her image, she said unacceptable. And so she was talking about this idea of how black women's bodies are deemed in society, that when juxtaposed or sitting next to a white woman who is wearing the same type of garb, it is not seen as acceptable. And so she's been able to take on feminism in her own right and to speak out for herself. The other two images are some of the more controversial issues that occurred within hip-hop. One is the, as you see at the top, blame hip-hop for Dynamis. When Dynamis called the Rutgers women's basketball team a group of nappy-headed hoes, his alibi was, well, they said in hip-hop, so if they said in hip-hop, then I should be able to say it. Well, after this occurred, Oprah went and had her town hall meeting, and it's called Now What, where she had hip-hop executives on stage to talk about the ways in which women are addressed within hip-hop, as well as the use of the N-word within hip-hop. And then, as you see in the other pictures, Gail with a group of women from Spelman College who actually protested against Nelly, a rap artist, for his tip drill video, right? And so they were having conversations about hip-hop and the ways that women are impacted in hip-hop. So there has been this feminist movement within hip-hop as well, and there are a number of examples of lyrics and songs to discuss issues of feminism. And I talk a lot about those in the book. I talk about issues such as reproductive rights and demonstrate how hip-hop artists have addressed reproductive rights. And I didn't bring the song in for you today, but this is a song from a group, Diggable Planets, where they are actually talking about reproductive rights and explicitly talking about reproductive rights from a very academic sense as well, using and bringing up court cases and things to talk about and exemplify academic reproductive rights. And so this is one example, but there are a number of other examples I talk about when I'm looking at hip hop and feminism. One is sexual abuse and how rap artists, and particularly female rap artists, are able to talk about sexual abuse in their lyrics and are able to talk about issues of domestic violence. One of the songs I also reference is Eve's Love is Blind, where she talks about her friend being victimized and being assaulted and a victim of domestic violence, and how she is going to retaliate against the perpetrator of that violence. But this one is a song where this woman was actually talking about being sexually abused. And then there are male rap artists as well who talk about issues dealing with feminism. The video I usually shows is Lupe's Bitch Bad, which is actually talking about the role that hip hop actually plays in continuing stereotypes of women and invoking the attitudes and beliefs of young girls and young men. And we can definitely go back to that if you would like to see that later, if you have questions at the end. But for my research, one of the things that I state is that we should be able to identify political rap, right? Especially during this time when we're saying that rap is no longer political, and I've given you a number of examples of how rap still is political, but I needed to be able to identify what political rap is. So I created a criterion for identifying political rap. I say that if, in order to categorize a song as political, it must display political references. And those references can be either implicit or explicit. What I mean is that they can say something about the police, for example, as an extension of government as a reference, or it can have an implicit reference, again, using the police by saying 5-0, right? And that you would need to know what 5-0 means to understand that's a reference. Then it needs to, one, after it has a political reference, it needs to make a reference to a social problem, or it needs to advocate a solution. So it either needs to talk about some social problem or advocate a solution in order for it to be a political rap song. And this was important because people have talked about before that there are message rap songs and that these conscious rap songs and these songs that talk about social issues, but nobody has been able to give a criteria of how to identify these songs and how to quantify these songs and how to place these songs in a specific category. And again, as I stated, I did not want to be limited by looking at political artists, right? I wanted to look at artists' entire discography and to look through their discography to see what songs are political within their discography and examine those songs. And so in order to conduct my research, after identifying political rap songs, I created an experiment. And so this experiment was carried out at Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina. I wanted to choose a HBCU, historically black college or university, in order to ensure that I had a majority black population, because my research is about how does rap music impact black political attitudes and behavior. So for this research, I created 5 conditions. The first was the political rap condition, where there were 3 songs in each condition, and we'll talk about the conditions on the next slide. There was also an R&B group, and a group of pop music, and a group of mainstream rap, and then there was a control group. Right? And I had a control group so that can be my base for comparison. I did not want to do a pre-test, because if I did a pre-test asking questions, then that would impact the results that I may have seen when I actually exposed them to the music. My sample size was 191 students that ranged in age from 17 to 48, with 175 of those being African American, and those are the students in which you will see the results. The gender distribution, 110 males, 79 females. And I first examined this idea of black nationalism by creating a 10-variable black nationalist index with 10 different questions, which all loaded on the same factor and had an alpha coefficient. Did I have it in here? No. Had an alpha coefficient, I think, of 79. So 79% accurate. So with these 5 conditions, again, political rap, R&B, pop, and mainstream or non-political rap music control group, I chose 3 songs for each of the conditions. The songs were between the years of 1995 and 2006. 2006 is when I conducted my research. I chose 1995 because that was the end of the so-called golden era, right? That was the end when they said political rap no longer existed. So I want to examine the rap that was created between that time frame after the golden era of rap. Rap is most dominant in 3 different regions. So I chose the West, the Northeast, and the South. And all the songs in these conditions, in the political rap, and the R&B, and the pop, and the non-political rap condition, all were from an artist from the West, the Northeast, or the South. And they all represented that time frame between 1995 and 2006. Okay, so for instance, in my political rap group, I had the song Us by Ice Cube, which is at that beginning end of that 1995 period. He also represents the West Coast. Okay. Police State by Dead Prez was created around 2000. That was in the middle of that time frame. They represented the Northeast. And then Georgia Bush by Lil Wayne, which was right after Hurricane Katrina, so around about 2005, 2006. And he represented the South. And so this was the criteria that was utilized for each of those groups when I chose artists for each of those groups. And what I was able to see is that political rap did lead to more acceptance and adoption of black nationalist attitudes. Okay, so you can see that from my graph. And so with the experiments, what happened was the students went into the classrooms. They were exposed to the music of their condition. They were randomly assigned to classrooms based on where they appeared. They were randomly sent to different classrooms. They heard the 3 songs, and then they answered a questionnaire in which these variables were on the questionnaire. It was about 64 variables. Out of those 64, I used 10 to measure black nationalism. And once I measured black nationalism, I saw that those that were in the political rap condition or the political rap group had more support of black nationalist attitudes than those in any of the other groups, especially in comparison to the control group and especially in comparison to the mainstream rap group. You see that R&B group is very interesting right there because it has an increase in support of black nationalism, still not as high as political rap, but we can, one of my ideas and conclusions from this result is that the idea of it representing another primarily black genre that also talks about political issues as well. Although the songs that were utilized in this experiment did not talk about, it might have invoked and allowed students to recall previous songs that they heard. The music that was used in the R&B group was mostly love songs. It's like Usher, Let It Burn, and yeah. Something that should not have had any type of effect on black nationalism. And then I also measured black feminism. I measured black feminism by using 4 variables I created into an index to measure black feminism. And black feminism is interesting, and I'm going to show you this version of it, because what we see is what a lot of these studies have stated before. There is a distinction between the type of rap you are exposed to and your feelings towards black women or black feminist attitudes, right? But this chart is able to show that distinction more clearly. There is some rap music that is detrimental to black feminist attitudes and black feminist beliefs, but it's not necessarily political rap. What this is showing is that non-political or mainstream rap definitely leads to less support of black feminist attitudes, while political rap leads to a greater support of black feminist attitudes. And then we have that relationship between political rap and that R&B group as well. Okay. So that's what I do in the 3rd and the 4th chapter. And I talk about and explain and lead up to this idea of black feminism and black nationalism, and my hypotheses were supported in that political rap does have an impact on attitudes. But how does that impact behavior? What does that actually mean for behavior in the community? And what other ways have rap artists been involved? And so in the 5th chapter, I talk about all the other ways in which rap artists have been involved, which rap organizations have been created, and how these types of songs can actually impact behavior. So as you see here on your screen, there are a number of hip-hop organizations that were created. The first one is the Hip Hop Summit Action Network that was created by Russell Simmons, which P. Diddy is also a member of the board. And this organization was successful in having aspects of the Rockefeller drug laws repealed when they organized protests in New York. This is one of the things that they did that stand out. But this organization also has some deep connections to Black nationalist organizations. For instance, similar to the Black Panther Party, who had a 10-point party platform, the Hip Hop Summit Action Network has a 10-point platform. And their platforms directly align to some of the issues that the Black Panther Party was discussing previously in their own platform, right? So issues against the criminal justice system, issues supporting the rights of Blacks and other minorities within the United States. Then you also have the Hip Hop Caucus, who has been around to help and are still active in voter registration drives, in informing youth of different policies that may affect them, also in having a discussion with on their website and in various cities, such as the Hip Hop Summit did as well, going to different cities talking about current political or policy issues that young people should be aware of. So hip hop has been involved politically, and then there was the National Hip Hop Political Convention, which is no longer in effect, but it started in 2004 in New Jersey, where they were organizing individuals and mobilizing individuals, but also having various panels on political issues that they should support and informing them. I went to the one in Chicago, and they were giving out things such as Your Rights, a little booklet of what you should do when you're stopped by the police. They had different panels on the ways that hip hop is involved, what you can do in your community, and different things like that, as well as demonstrating and showing the elements of hip hop music, right? So they had rappers performing, they had breakdancers and a DJ contest, so they had all the different elements there. But we also see rap artists address through music some issues in the community. So you have the song Self-Destruction by the Stop the Violence movement, dealing with violence within the hip hop community, specifically violence at the shows is the issues that they were addressing. And then you had the West Coast produce something similar called We're All in the Same Gang, where they're talking about gang violence in their communities. And of course, at the bottom you have Puff Daddy with his Vote or Die campaign, which is probably one of the more voter mobilization campaigns that existed out of hip hop. But then there was also T.I.'s Respect My Vote campaign. And T.I. Respect My Vote campaign was dealing with the law here in Georgia that you can still vote even if you are charged with a felony before you go to prison. And so he was advocating and informing individuals in Georgia about the right to vote before they actually went to prison, even if they have a felony charge. And then we've seen rap artists speak out for a number of different issues. One is the trial of Troy Davis, which was highly politicized, and I believe this was 2011, where they had rap artists talking about and creating songs detailing the case, where the case was, I think it was 12 witnesses, 11 of those witnesses recanted their story, and they were trying to get Troy Davis off of death row. He was eventually killed in the state of Georgia. He was originally from Savannah, Georgia, was charged with killing an off-duty police officer. But during his last couple of days, you had artists organizing in Atlanta like Big Boy and Killer Mike that were actually organizing and taking buses down to Savannah in order to protest for Troy Davis. So we've seen rap, and we're constantly seeing rap being political. At the top there, Nas has a song about Fox News, and so he was outside protesting Fox News, and what he says is a biased type of news in which they give to the public. And then, of course, the case of Trayvon Martin, where a number of rap artists spoke out and organized protests, as well as songs around Trayvon Martin. And finally, what my publishers really wanted me to talk about was rap involvement in electoral politics, and specifically, they wanted me to talk a lot about rap and President Barack Obama. So how did Barack Obama use rap during his campaigns and during his administrations? And so that first image there is when Barack Obama first came off the stage in 2004 when he did that Democratic National Convention speech. He stepped off the stage and went behind, and there was Puff Daddy right there asking him what did he feel about it and how did he feel. And at that moment, Puff Daddy said, if you run for election, I will donate to your campaign. And so that was the first support that he received from rap artists. That bottom image there is him with Ludacris, another artist from Atlanta, and he actually held a private meeting with Ludacris in 2006. So it's before his 2008 election. This meeting, however, led to a lot of controversy because anybody know anything about Ludacris, he can be very misogynistic in his lyrics. And then later he created a song that he thought was supporting Barack Obama, but it was actually very negative towards Hillary Clinton and Senator John McCain. And so what happened after that, after Ludacris' song came out, is that rap artists got together and they organized behind closed doors and they said, hey, look, we want Barack Obama to win. We want him to become elected. So we need to not talk about him publicly in any of our songs, and we need to not talk about him publicly or be on the campaign trail with him. We need to not promote him. They say we can talk about him at our concerts among our audience members, but we need to not be out publicly talking about him because we don't want Barack Obama to be associated with the negative connotations of hip-hop music and hip-hop artists. And so this was led by Scarface, who is an artist out of Texas, and Ice Cube. They were the ones that organized this and got all the artists to come together on a consensus to say that, hey, we can advocate for Barack Obama, but only amongst our audience members. We cannot be on the campaign trail because we don't want the media to be able to connect him to hip-hop in that way. But Barack Obama did his own thing with connecting to hip-hop, right? And so you see him being featured on the Vibe Special Issue, which is a hip-hop magazine. And of course, his most infamous thing is what he did at his own campaign trail after someone asked him about what Sarah Palin and John McCain were saying about him and Michelle Obama, and Barack Obama just simply said, right? So he didn't say anything. He just used a gesture. But that gesture was symbolically relating to the hip-hop community because everyone who knows the hip-hop knows that means I'm just going to brush them off my shoulder, right? That comes from JayZ's song. I'm not even going to pay attention to that. They're gone. I'm not going to pay attention to that. So we saw him using not only hip-hop symbolically, meeting with hip-hop artists. We can talk about the number of speeches that Barack Obama gave where he alluded to hip-hop, right? My favorite one is that he said during his correspondence speech dinner, he said, you know, last administration I sang Al Green, but this administration I'm saying some Young Jeezy. Right? So he was talking about a couple of different things there, right? Was I safe with Al Green? Everybody loves Al Green, but I'm a little bit more of a bad man this time around, so I'm going to say some Jeezy, you know, and those from Atlanta that knows Jeezy was associated with some mafia-type people, right? And he also creates this bad type of music. So Barack Obama has utilized hip-hop in a number of ways, and that final image was during his second administration when he invited Kendrick Lamar to the White House and to actually visit the White House after his album To Pimp a Butterfly came out, and Kendrick Lamar captioned that photo as hood politics, right, after one of his songs. But Barack Obama was not the only one that was utilizing hip-hop or the only way in which hip-hop was utilized in electoral politics. In the middle there, you see Shay Rhinefest Smith. He is most widely known for writing Kanye West's famous song, Jesus Walks. He is a producer and a writer in Chicago. He ran for alderman in the 20th Ward, and he actually participated in the runoff elections, right? And he lost after the runoff elections, but he got so far as to the runoff election. So he was one of the top two contenders for this position and did not win after the runoff election. And with him, he had the support of people like Lupe Fiasco and Common and Kanye West, who were organizing different campaigns around him and organizing different stomps and mobilizing individuals to vote and to go and participate. Then you also have Luke, and this is for all of us older people who listen to Luke, right? He was an artist from Miami who is probably famous for two things: his misogynistic music, but also for winning a case against Supreme Court for freedom of speech because of his music. He later ran for mayor of Miami-Dade County. He did not win that position. But Luke has been involved with politics before then with his group that actually created a song in support of Janet Reno, who many want to allude to actually having an impact on Janet Reno becoming more popular. at least among young people, because of the song that he created. And then at the bottom is one of our more recent examples, and this is Killer Mike and his endorsement of Bernie Sanders. We've seen Killer Mike speak out a number of times with Bernie Sanders, holding interviews even in his barbershop here in Atlanta with Bernie Sanders and being highly supportive. And as again I said, that Killer Mike and T.I. were both a part now of Keisha Lance-Bottoms' transition team, so we still are seeing them being involved in politics on the local level. So this is how I end my book. I talk about the global aspect as well, and so I talk about the ways that hip-hop has now expanded throughout the United States and being used to fight politically in other nations. I talk about the involvement of hip-hop in the Arab Spring and the uprisings that occurred there, as well as the way hip-hop has been used to fight for various marginalized groups in other countries. Okay? So thank you very much.